Hey, this is PxP, artist discussions about process and practice. PxP is brought to you by the City of Chico Arts Commission, serving our Chico community through arts advocacy and partnerships that promote our community's artistic and cultural development, and the 1078 Gallery, a nonprofit, volunteer-run organization offering exciting exhibitions of contemporary and experimental artworks in visual, musical, literary, film, and performance mediums. This is episode 4 with Alfredo Apolinar, Zarina Gazard, and John Rollo. Okay, and so thanks for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Very happy to be here.
Okay. Who are you? What creative and artistic areas do you work in? And what is your primary art form? Do you have any secondary art forms? Alfredo, you want to start?
Yeah, I am a ceramic artist. Creative and artistic areas I work in, clay being the main one. I am currently in school, so that gives me the opportunity to kind of discover new mediums. And so glass was one of them. So that has been, I guess, my secondary art form. Yeah.
And you just got accepted into the BFA program.
I did,
yeah,
yes.
So exciting. Have you ever combined ceramics and glass?
No, but I would love to.
Okay.
That is definitely a goal that I want to accomplish sometime within the next year or so. Just kind of start pushing towards that. I think right now I'm kind of hung up on just clay right now. And so I think combining the two would push me out of my kind of boundaries and limits.
Seems like great stuff for BFA explorations.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I'm very excited.
Yeah, that's awesome. Zarina.
The who am I question is always really hard.
Who are, I know. Yeah.
A whole list of things. I'm a creative. My pronouns are she, her. And for my artistic areas I work in, it's always ceramics, but I do really like photography. I spent a few years doing photography. Just this past semester, I've shifted specifically towards life drawing with charcoal. Kind of had to, do that. I do figures specifically in ceramics, and I was convinced to take some more figure drawing classes here at Chico State, and it's been a really great experience with the professor that I currently have.
Who's that?
Jay.
Okay.
I don't know his last name. I'm so sorry. He just goes by Jay. But he's a great professor, and he motivates me and pushes me a lot. So I think that would be my second medium currently.
Okay. You ever combine charcoal and ceramics?
No.
Okay. Ideas. John, who are you?
Usually I answer that question with I'm John. I feel like that sums it up pretty well. I'm hard to pin down sometimes, I guess. Sorry, I have seasonal allergies. That might be a thing. I'm going to try to keep it to a minimum.
Just edit those out, yeah.
But mostly, right now I'm working in clay. I've really fallen in love with clay. It's such a great medium to work with. I love the hands-on. I love it's messy, and there's just so much you can do with it. I think the real limitation with clay a lot of the times is imagination and, what you can conceptualize. Secondary art forms, always. I love all of the art forms, mostly like painting and drawing. I got into miniatures a little bit over the summer, and I hope to eventually get into photography. But yeah, really loving the clay train right now.
Okay. And I knew you back when you were just a high school student in a art class.
A wee 15-year-old, I think?
I think so, yeah. So I was
John's
high school art teacher for a couple years.
She introduced me to clay. I have her to thank for that.
It's like very fulfilling for me to see you continue to explore that. And I did notice you first, just your drawings and your paintings. That was kind of like where I kind of understood your ability to envision things and then execute them, so you had that work ethic. And then I was like, what can this kid do in clay? And then it was just a bunch of projects of scary heads.
Very scary. They still sit on my bookshelf, and I think even the painting I was working on for the longest time is still unfinished with all my other unfinished paintings.
You'll finish it someday.
Someday.
Yeah.
I haven't forgotten.
So let's talk about creative origins, and I love this part of the discussion because you didn't just wake up one day and you're like, I'm going to be an artist. There were things that happened in your life that led you to this point of putting all your energy into this journey, right? And it's not an easy one because you have to build the skills to be able to make the things that you see in your head. And I think a lot of people, they can't climb that mountain, and so they don't get to the other side of that. And so you're here, you're committed artists. And what do you recognize circumstances or events in your life growing up that kind of led you to be on this journey right now?
My dad is a DJ, so growing up, I would go to parties with him, and so musical background would kind of be with that. It translated into me wanting to do something with music. Was never really good at it, but I started to kind of find these other art forms, and so going into high school was a screen printing class. I took that, thought I wanted to be a graphic designer, and so kind of followed that route throughout high school. But right my senior year, I took a clay class, and that was fun. Didn't really think anything of it. And fast forward to 2021, we had ended up taking a ceramics class at this local studio in Laguna Beach, and that was fun. We looked at each other and we said, we have to find some more ceramic classes. We got to try it again. That was fun. And so we joined Santa Ana College's clay class, and that's just kind of where it took off.
Do you remember what were some of the things you made in that first ceramics class?
Yes. I made a camera because that was fun. I made a kangaroo with some very oversized feet and a really big head. Ended up toppling over, so that didn't work out.
Important lessons to learn early on.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And then just this tiny little cup that I threw on the wheel, and that was the first wheel thrown piece. I screen printed on clay, which was fun, and I didn't realize what that would kind of translate into later in life. So, here we are now.
How about
playing
you,
with clay.
Serena?
The first thing I made?
Sure. Yeah. Let's take us. Take us back to that class. Well, then we'll go back from there.
That class?
Yeah. What'd you make?
That was my first clay class. So it was like geared like 30 minutes on the wheel, 30 minutes you could hand build.
Oh, okay.
So the first thing I made was this cute little like pinched in on the center and open up the top. It's a cute little cup. Classic. I leave it at my bedside just as a little reminder. The second thing my grandma now owns, and I made a little bowl, pinch potted a bowl, and I put a frog in the center. Loves it so much. Keeps it by her bedside.
Wow.
That was the first thing I made in clay.
Frog bowl.
Very humble beginning.
How about growing up? Like, what were you like as a kid? What were your interests? Were your parents?
My parents aren't really like creatives. My uncle's a tattoo artist, and my brother, he actually like worked at a piercing shop. So I kind of was around people that drew a lot. I'm familiar with that. I never drew growing up. Here and there we would partake in crafts, but no, I was not creative really growing up. But I did start doing my makeup when I was probably like 11 years old. My mom started allowing me at 11, and all throughout middle school, high school, I either wanted to be a hairstylist or a makeup artist, and I did pursue makeup for a few years after high school. So I really owe a lot of my creative origins to makeup.
That's such an interesting field. It'd be interesting to see how you circle back to that sometime in your artistic practice. Because you make a lot of like faces, right? On pots and things like that.
Yeah, faces and figures, yeah.
It's all connected. How about you, John?
Creative origins. I thought about that question for a long time, and the earliest memory of like being creative in an artistic sense I can think of is I would have been like 3 or 4 before I was in kindergarten, and my parents kept these giant pads of like newsprint paper under our couch. And my favorite thing to do as a kid was me and my sister, who was at like 2 at the time, would get these giant pads of paper out in our living room, and we'd sit on the floor and just doodle with these colored markers. And it was just something I kept always coming back to. Even when those pads of paper were full, like it was always just like I would come back to drawing was how I started, because it was just so fun. It was something I got to do like with and for myself, I guess. So yeah, it was something just I always loved growing up, and it just I never stopped, I guess.
I love watching children draw because it's very much like almost like a performative thing, and they have this imaginary play, but it's like playing out in real time on the paper. And I can totally see you being just like totally in that world, in that space.
Honestly, I think what kept me going was the frustration of like, I can't hold the pen right because I didn't have the motor skills yet. So it was always just like, doesn't look right. No, like I need to do it again.
Early self-criticism.
No, it was in a fun way though. It was like, no, like I'm going to get this. I'm going to do it. And then when it turned out to be something that I liked, it was like, oh, I need to do this a million more times.
I think art provides that though, right? Where it's like you are met with a challenge almost every time you sit down to make something, and then you have to like figure out how to make it happen. And almost it's like I'm kind of addicted to that, where it's like, how am I going to make this? And then there's like that process of like, sometimes you're compromising what your vision is like while you're making it, because you're like, well, you just go back and forth with yourself. Okay, so let's talk about creative spirit and creative flow. So artists tap into that in different ways. You certainly know the times you sit down and like it just feels right, and you're like, oh, I'm feeling inspired, and then sometimes you're sitting down and it's just like, not fruitful, not productive, or frustrating. But how do you get into that flow? What do you know about that? What does that feel like to you?
For me, I like to listen to music when I'm on the wheel, and so sometimes I don't know what I'm doing. I just kind of listen to the song, listen to the beat, see how that kind of feels, what kind of reaction I get out of that. And sometimes it's fruitful and productive, and I sit down and I make what I can. But other times I just kind of just doesn't sit, so I just get off, go do something else, walk around a little. Maybe I see a shadow or something that I like the shape of, and that just kind of is enough inspiration for me to go, oh, well, I'll just mess with that. And then in turn, that turns to something else, and that's just kind of how I see it.
It's like almost like a warm up.
Yeah,
a little warm up routine, like
exactly.
An athlete. But
because then that just kind of brings me back to like, oh well, no, I wanted to do this, and then it just kind of keeps going, kind of like a domino effect.
Yeah. How about you, Zarina? Flow
state. I'm really grateful for school, because you have those deadlines you have to meet, and so I think that's recently, at least the past year, been my big motivation. Is I have this deadline and I want for myself to make the best piece that I can possibly make, so I'm going to keep putting in that effort. But I would definitely say like my most fruitful nights are when I'm showing up at 10 p.m. and I have some really good friends to hang out with in the studio and just gossip with, talk about life with, get to know people. Those are definitely the best nights that I have, where I accomplish a lot more and make friends.
Deadlines, right now you're students, so you have deadlines all over the place, right? And how do you see yourself managing your art practice or your pursuits outside of school where, you might not have deadlines? Does that sound doable to you? Does that sound scary?
Yes and yes. I don't know. It's hard to answer that question because it feels like art's always kind of just been a practice in life. It's arguably my biggest hobby, I guess. So it's weird to picture a life without it. Like Serena was saying, school is a big pusher, I think, but that's not always a good thing. It would be something that I would want to work into everyday life, even if I wasn't going to school. So in some capacity, always.
It's interesting when you're out of like the student times, it's like you just get caught up in life, and then sometimes you want to create, you want to keep your practice up, so then you'll impose a deadline on yourself, like signing up for a show or something, and then you're like, oh, I have to make that stuff that I committed to. Staying involved in the community, and that provides opportunities to, keep your practice going and to have deadlines to make things, because, life will just take over. Yeah,
that's one of the awesome things about ceramics is it's so community based. Yeah. Everybody I've met who does ceramics is so nice, which is not, I don't want to bash other mediums, but I feel like it's a kind of a unique thing.
I love that vision of you, Zarina, like in the shop and talking with your friends. And like, I relate to that, and I've experienced that. And there's that warmth in that community. And ceramics is special in that way, because just even the way the lab's set up, working at the same table, and, you're able to give each other feedback and, talk about your ideas. That's really special. I love that. I love that about ceramics. Where does a project begin for y'all?
For me, it begins with sketches.
Okay.
Sometimes I have an idea in my head and I try to draw it down. Sometimes it's kind of just walking along the street into the studio. A lot of the forms that I started making on the wheel were inspiration from like lampposts. Yeah, seeing like the glass up at the top.
I
and
see
so
that
was interesting. And then that just kind of helped me push my forms a little bit more.
Do you feel like you're just like walking around the world in that kind of state of like ready to receive all that inspiration? You're like taking it all in?
I'd like to think so.
Yeah.
I like to think that I keep myself open to creative energy.
Yeah, that's
all
like a
around.
special kind of awareness though, and you probably develop that, like you start to notice things over time, and then that's just like your habit. How about you?
I would say Pinterest.
Okay.
Mood boards.
I love that.
And that's where I definitely
Okay.
start off. You see a lot of more crafty and beginning art, or a lot more little education on there. So I love Pinterest specifically for that reason. But most of my ideas come from focusing on currently self-identity within my culture specifically. So that's kind of where I find the ideas. Like, I can have a mood board, but it's kind of just getting an emotion out or a person out that I'm imagining, and, just going from there.
John, where does a project begin?
I think beginnings to projects for me come from quite literally all over the place. Ideas kind of come either like at really, really opportune moments when I'm already sketching, or like I'll be going 65 on the freeway and I have an idea and I'm like, okay, I need to think about this until I stop so I can write it down or I'll forget. But that's usually how like a concept will start, and then I sketch it out. I like to take a lot of inspiration from organic forms, things I see in nature, because I love the outdoors. It's always been a big thing. And I think that's where a lot of inherent beauty lies in the world. I like to take a lot of inspiration from other artists. I have a lot of favorites, movies, books, but yeah, like from everywhere all the time.
And then you're writing that stuff down in notebooks or sketch.
For me, it's sketchbooks. And then sometimes if I'm just kind of out and about, I think of an idea, I try to take a picture, and then I black it out, and then I try to draw the form like through editing the picture.
That's a cool
probably-
practice. It's like a little mini form study, just
Yeah.
right in your hand.
Yeah, exactly. Because I would love to think that I would keep a little sketchbook on me at all times, but I'm terrible with that. So pictures it is.
But we
whatever
always
I can.
have our phones.
Exactly.
We're all sick like that.
I have many a time told Siri, like, hey Siri, start a new notes page and make it say this. And I'm like doing one thing while like yapping to my phone and hoping it just gets it all, and then I can someday rediscover it.
I love Siri. Yeah, personal
Helpful.
assistant. So you all just came back from the California conference for the advancement of ceramic art. Let's talk about that experience that you had, and what does it mean for you and your practice to participate in an artist gathering like that, and what did you take away from it?
That experience is probably one of my favorite ones. Getting to see the different colleges that are showing their work, talking to different students.
Can you
seeing where their mind's
describe
kind
the
of at.
event a little bit, just like so somebody who's listening can
Yeah,
understand how it's set up? Because it's a cool.
It is.
Yeah,
No, it's super cool. So it's over a span of 2 days, from typically Friday, Saturday, and then different schools come and show up at different galleries throughout the city, throughout downtown. And
Downtown Davis.
Yes.
Yeah. There's like pop-up galleries and actual galleries, and then it's a big celebration of ceramic art. And you're bringing your college group, your ceramic club, or your ceramics classes, and you're showing your work, but you're also like going and checking out everybody else's work.
There's
The
a lot of
workshops
senior artists that
giving
will do
talks.
workshops and artist talks. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. What'd you take away from that? What'd you bring back with you?
I personally have had wonderful experiences going to Davis. This year would be my third year. I'd say the first 2 years, I really focused on going to every single artist talk. That was like my big hit. I had to go see every single one. Just something changed this year where I was like, I need to see every person's work. I need to see every school and just like really soak that in. Like, you're exposed to students, student work, but you have so little exposure when you're in class. Like, there's only so much you can see, but when you see everyone and all of their students from all over California and what they're making, what they're creating, what inspires them, it's all so different. Everyone's work is so different. And I think that this year was like my big hit. I was really inspired by everyone else.
What's it like preparing? So you all worked on pieces to submit to represent Chico State. How many students were in your group?
There was a lot this year. Chico State had a really dense show. We did really good this year. I think we represented very well. There was at least 15 of us, I would say. I think that's a good estimate. Student work's always kind of like the star of the show, at least for me.
What was it like conceptualizing and preparing a piece to rep yourself and the school?
So it was last year's Davis that I was it was my first Davis ever. That was like right after my first advanced class too. And I remember walking around and being like, oh, this is like another level. I need to go home and like, I need to come back prepared. So that was like what I was thinking about all year in preparation for this most recent one. And just so many hours in the studio.
Did you have any ideas, like, after the first time you went that carried through to what you eventually brought to this year?
Definitely.
Okay.
There was this one piece I remember seeing last year at Davis, and I don't think it was student work. I think it was one of the professors or someone who owned like a studio, but it was this giant rock abstract piece with a hole through the center of it. And I just remember thinking about the scale of it and just like how impressive it was that it didn't even have a pedestal. It was just off the floor.
Okay.
And I know that's not uncommon in ceramics, but for me, it really was like, I'd never seen that before. So I think the size of that, and also just thinking about like just so many different things. Like I had working in a box before of like, okay, it needs to be like small enough to carry, like dinner plate. Bigger than that's not really going to be very, I can't think of the word, practical. Yeah, I was like trying to steer away from practicality and just go like all in was, I think, what the step in kind of getting more serious about it.
I love that you just gave yourself permission to not be practical, because I feel like, you figure out how to transport or you figure out how to display, but like you just got to make the thing that, you want to make and then
now
figure it out.
I have no space in my house.
Okay, yeah. Can you describe the piece you showed, Alfredo?
Yeah, it was a taller form. It came to a point on one end, and then it was. Sorry, I know I'm trying to think because I work with like more geometrical shapes.
Yeah.
And so by stacking them, I kind of created the silhouette that I was looking for. There was these 4 kind of pillars on each side of one, and that was holding it so that there was some space in between.
Okay.
And luckily there was like a little glaze dripping from one point onto another. So that was, I guess that's kind of the best that I can describe that.
How about you, Zarina?
I created a piece that was kind of like a self-portrait, 2 identities of myself, and they were small figurines. It was probably about not even a foot by a foot. And I drew my inspiration from Frida Kahlo. She was my first artist, freshman year Spanish class, and I think she was really opened me up as an artist into feminism and all of that. And I was recently doing a lot of artist studying and, just finding out what the big artist inspirations were. And I found out she's not full Mexican. She's mixed, I think, I forget. German, yeah, thank you. She's mixed with German. And I found a lot of inspiration in that. I'm also mixed. My family's Puerto Rican, and then my other side's German and Italian. So I took a lot of inspiration from that just because where she grew up, it was really hard for her to feel whole in a community. She never felt like she belonged to a specific community, and I really related heavily to that. So I redid her painting that she did for that was the 2 Fridas. So she's holding both of her hearts. She's dressed as a traditional Mexican. She's dressed as who she truly is. And I took that and dressed myself up on one side very feminine in a dress, in a white dress. And I find a lot of self-identity in my hair. And so curly hair was the second lady. And that's kind of how I represented myself.
How'd you execute that curly hair?
Oof, it was hard. Oh my gosh. So I actually was doing it on the side in my throwing professor's class. And very unfortunately, it got thrown away over Christmas break when we were out for 2 weeks.
Wait, and your piece?
My piece, yes. It was my fault. I left it in a damp locker with no note. But thankfully, Cam's first project was a remake project, and it was great.
Oh, so you got to make it twice?
Yes, but it was honestly one of the best experiences to have to remake a piece, because every fail that you have, you learn from. So I think going in from that and being like, okay, this is everything I did wrong here. Let me not go around that this second time. And finding the hair, it's really hard to decide, well, how realistic do I want to go? It's finding the balance of volume and doing tiny little details just to give someone the hint, like, oh, this is supposed to be curly.
This is hair, yeah, this is curly hair. I love the way that art just lends itself to like investigation of yourself, and then you get to work that out in a visual way. Ceramics is great for that. Let's take a break. I want to invite you, if you want to ask a question, insert a question into the discussion. On that yellow table by the door, there's pieces of paper and a marker. Please write a question, and we'll insert it in, and we'll come back in like 10 minutes. Okay, and we're back. I want to circle back to the Davis conference. And John, you just told me you made 10 pieces.
Yes.
What?
So when I went home from Davis last year, I was determined to show up next year. And I feel like I did that pretty well. I had two large scale for me, pieces that one was my first coil built project. It was like a big oval shaped donut, maybe like 2.5 feet tall, that I connected like cave looking formations to, and it had all these weird spires, and I covered it in this glaze called Lana Chartreuse Moss. I love Lana, whoever you are. I have a lot to thank you for. But it's like 70% lithium. So it has this really cool, like neon green looking tech, and it gets this cool, like crawling texture.
Hope you were wearing a mask.
I was not. Don't tell my professor. And then the other large scale coil was a series, or it was the kind of the final installation in a series that I had started in advanced, that was inspired by Rorschach tests, the ink blots, where it's kind of like, what do you see? Because that was always a thing that I would get with art, is like, well, what's it supposed to be? It's a this, it's a that. So I wanted to make something where it's like, if you see that, like that's for you, sort of a thing. Because I think that's a lot of what art is for people. I mean, every viewer will see something different, and that's kind of the fun part. And then the rest was a series of 8 little statues that I had made in a mold making class. I made this plaster mold that weighed like 60 pounds, and it was like a process of 3 months. I made 8 of these little statue guys. They looked like little birds, I guess you could say, in an abstract sort of a way. And they were kind of positioned in a circle. Normally they'd be in a line, but each one got like progressively more moldy looking, like they were deteriorating.
Did you have the final like positioning and display of your work? Was that something you worked out at the show?
Yeah, usually every year what we do is we get there, we start with lighting, and then we start with pedestals, and then we kind of shuffle things around as it needs it. But we were really pressed for space this year. They had 5 colleges in one building, and
In a bank.
we were in a space that was probably less than half the size of this room that we're in right now, but we managed to fit everybody's stuff in. It was, honestly, I think, kudos to Cam. He's very good at that.
Sounds like a very energetic like moment where you had to like all come together and figure out like very quickly how you were going to display your work, and also to make everybody happy.
It helped.
Was everybody happy?
Not everybody was there, and that's what helped. It was me, Alfredo, and Zarina showed up kind of towards the end of it. Most of it was me, the Clay Club treasurer, and Brian and Cam. And we just kind of followed Cam's lead. I don't know anything about setting up a gallery space, but I do know how to follow directions. But yeah, it helps that not everybody's there kind of like barking in your ear, like, no, I want this there, like this is mine, it's supposed to go like this. Because then we can kind of like prioritize everything instead of just one singular person who's just being louder than everyone else. So it was a great experience. It's always fun to watch the people who know what they're doing work.
Yeah. Cam was my professor way back in the day. I love knowing that you get that experience and that you've all worked with him. Let's just talk about Cam for a second. What have you gleaned from Cam, just watching him, watching how he works, or watching how he teaches, or talk about Cam?
I'll say one thing, since I've been talking for a while, but there's one thing that just sums up like the majority of what I've taken away from him, which is a lot, hard to sum up. But he told me, I think the first beginning class or advanced class I ever took with him was think about like your work from every single angle. If it sits on a pedestal, think about the underside, think about the inside. Think about if it's a bust, think about the backside. If it hangs on the wall, think about the backside. Think about the angles that no one's ever going to see, and make sure that that work is held to the same standard from every angle. That's a good motto to have. I think that really helps take work to a higher quality. And yeah, that's something I've always remembered.
How about you, Alfredo?
Yeah, to kind of add on to that, actually, every time that I've asked Cam for like a second opinion, he takes it a different approach than I kind of expect. And typically my pieces they're thrown on the wheel. And so the kind of way that I'm thinking of displaying them is typically on a pedestal, but every now and then Cam maybe lays it on its side, or he puts it up against the wall. He kind of makes me think a little bit differently of how I should be approaching these, and instead of taking it literally for what it is and standing upright, I can play around with how it's displayed. And so that's kind of made me take a step back and think a little bit harder about how I'm going to be displaying these. And I think that's kind of taken over the last, I want to say maybe half of the semester that we've had.
Cam is like a master teacher, right? He just is able to tap into you and like guide you through this thought process. And then what I'm hearing you say and what I remember of Cam, the conversations, it's like he's modeling how to think about your art in a different way. And then that's something you get to absorb and you carry with you just in your, art practice for the rest of your life. Zarina, what do you think about Cam?
So unfortunately for me, I've only taken one class with Cam, and I'm currently still in that class.
How's it going?
It's going great. I think he's a great professor, and I really appreciate the assignments that he has us do, but he's very flexible. I would say that 100%. I don't want to speak for everyone, but sometimes you see teachers, maybe specifically ceramics teachers, push kind of art that they like, but when you come to Cam's studio, you see all different kinds. Like there's not one person making the same thing or making the same aesthetic, the same colors. Everyone's different, and he fully, lets everyone be their own person, whether it's I'm here to be a crafty, or I'm here to be a potter, or I'm here to full throttle it and wing everything I do. Like she's like, yeah, that's great, do that. And I really, really appreciate that from an art teacher, not just for myself, but to see other people and other peers, because I want everyone to love ceramics. So I think he fully creates that environment.
Yeah.
The way that a lot of Cam's assignments are very open-ended, or like open for interpretation. He's very flexible on like what it is composition-wise that we want to make, and that has been like invaluable for like developing a body of work that feels true to myself. And I'm sure a lot of students in his classes would say the same. And he's entertaining, so. And every once in a while we get to see his dog Bert, which is awesome.
Oh my gosh, it's great. It's so nice to see a dog in the ceramic studio.
Shout out to Bert. Let's read a question from the audience. What is your biggest, baddest, most outlandish dream project? What would you make if you had no constraints?
I've thought about this question a lot. So if I had no constraints ever, like money, time, space, anything, is it out of the question to say I would want to build a planet? I'd want to build a planet. I'd want to build the terrain. I'd want to build the buildings. I'd want to build the life forms. And then I'd want to go live there. I'd give it a narrative. I'd give it a story. And it would be awesome.
I'm actually really surprised. That's thought out. You've thought about this before.
I mean, that's kind of what I already do with my art.
Bit of a god complex,
No. I would not. I would be very behind the scenes.
And all the people are on their knees worshiping me.
No, I would live in a little tiny cottage in the middle of nowhere, and they would not know I existed.
Oh.
I like pieces that tell a story. So I would want to do something that did that.
How is a way that you could CGI as what's the closest you could get to actually bringing that into some kind of physical form so other people could see it, I guess, digital?
Film. I went and saw, actually recently I went and saw the SF MoMA has Yayoi Kusama's Infinite Love exhibit, and that was nothing short of breathtaking. It was so immersive, and they gave us 2 minutes to go through these incredibly thought out mirror rooms. She calls them infinity rooms, but they're like this giant box with mirrors on the floor, like floor to ceiling everywhere, and these lights elements in them, and they're just so incredible. And I love the immersive aspect of that.
What would you make, Alfredo? No constraints.
No constraints. I'd love to do like a collab piece with Gregory Pace, have his forms, or well, my forms, but his scale, kind of fill up a room, have Ron Nagel for all the added texture. I would reach out to Seth Green and help me out with creating these forms. Yeah, I mean, nothing crazy like a planet, but it's something fun.
I love that collaboration is part of your vision.
Yeah,
like,
I
you want that experience.
I do want that experience. I want my pieces to be more, I guess, like interactive. And so I think what better way than to start with like the idea and then just kind of build on from there.
Collaboration's not always easy though, right? I think that's why it's an achievement if you're able to collaborate well with somebody. And even then, there's some hills to climb to figure out like how to communicate and how to share space. Serena, how are you at collaborating?
Oh, I don't like it too much, personally.
What would you make if you had no constraints? What's the biggest, baddest, wildest thing you can imagine making?
I don't know if anyone's familiar with Kara Walker, but I would love an industrial-sized building just to make something absolutely massive. Not like molasses, like how she does clay, but just a big enough space just to just work on a piece and make it bigger than life.
How do you want people to feel when they're in that space?
Intimidated, but comfortable.
Whoa.
Oh, this is scary, but I'm not scared of this at the same time. That would be...
Wow. I'm going to another audience question. What are some of your favorite pieces that you made? And can you talk about how you were inspired to make them? So you could think of one piece that you're really fond of, and then what's a little backstory on that?
I made a form that continues with that geometric kind of shapes. So it was more, I guess, like diamond shaped. And then it had a little band coming out. And then it went into a more spherical shape. And then the band coming out. And then another spherical shape on top of that. And just the finish of the clay, I left it bare. I didn't put any glaze on the outside. It was this gorgeous brown red color. The inside had a nice white and green kind of speckled glaze on it, and gorgeous. My favorite piece. It did unfortunately break, and I just still have the picture. I took a really nice picture of it, so luckily I have that. And our friend actually was coming up from Santa Ana to Davis during the conference, and she bought me a bag of that clay from Aardvark, which was nice, and now I have the chance to kind of remake it, which is nice.
Do you know what's the name of that clay?
It is Fat Red.
Fat Red.
Yes.
Okay.
My favorite.
I haven't
Cone
heard.
10, gorgeous red brown. Ooh, you'll love it.
Just watching your face talk about the texture of this clay is like it's really drawing me in.
It is gorgeous because there's like specks of black in it,
Yeah.
and then there's like little speckles of orange in it as well.
Zarina, what's a piece that you've made that you love, and how did it come to be?
I'm my biggest critic, so I don't have too many pieces that I'm like, yes, this is it. And the two that come to mind probably are my first mug. I made it last semester in my throwing class, and I leave it on this cute little mug hanger. Don't use it; it's just there to stare at. And my next favorite piece would be either my current. I can't wait for that one. But the two Zarinas. I feel like the biggest representation of where I want to move forward.
John, what's a favorite piece that you've made?
I have a couple that come to mind for that, which is kind of funny just considering what they are. One of them, like literally the size of like a softball, which is so silly because I make really large work, but it was a test tile I made for one of the pieces I took to Davis to test out that lithium glaze, and it was just like a little pinch pot that I like poked the walls together, made into a little donut shape, and I attached my little cave formations. But I think it was just something about the kind of like off-centeredness of it, and then also the way that the glaze came out was just so perfect. So I think it was more the firing of that. It was like exactly what I had in my head, and I've always kept that one. That's always been the one piece where I'm like, I'll give away any of my other things. Like, that's fine. I love seeing work exist in the world, but like that one's for me. That one little tiny one that I just came together so perfectly, like I didn't even want it to. I'll probably keep that one forever. There's one other one that was just a very rewarding process that I didn't know I had in me. But I did a collaboration with one of my friends from Chico State, and I put my Rorschach patterning on one of her wall flasks, which is a rectangular shape with a bunch of holes kind of evenly spaced on it. And I sat there and stared at it for almost a year trying to figure out how to get this pattern to work. And like it clicked, and I was just like, I need to do this right now. And I stayed up till like 4 a.m. Watching true crime documentaries and painting this flask. And it was a good moment for me as an artist to be like, I did that. I didn't do all of it, but I did some of it, and that feels really good.
I love this. I'll just tangent really quick, but it's interesting. I was thinking about this the other day when it's like you're making something, but you're also like watching something, or so it's like you're consuming and creating at the same time. That really tripped me out, but I don't know. Sometimes that helps you get in the flow when you're just doing something monotonous, or you need to like just push through or whatever.
Background noise is the best.
What kind of future visions do you have for yourself? I mean, this is such an exciting time in life. I remember being a student and just like everything was like possible. But then you're wrestling with like self-criticism, and you're like trying to figure out who you are, and you don't really know who you are until you're like hanging out with weird people, and you're like, I don't want to be like that. It's like a lot of just swirling. You're drinking Red Bulls. You just came in like pounding Red Bulls to, it was like, whoa, 20s. In this idealistic time in your life, what future visions do you have for yourself? What are some of your aspirations? Alfredo, you just got accepted in the BFA. What do you want to accomplish in your BFA studies?
Oh, that's a good question. I want to focus more on interaction between my piece and like the viewers. There's a couple ideas I have where, I don't know, people don't necessarily want to go up and touch the artwork, but I want to figure out how I can create artwork that's more inviting, that has the ability to be like messed around with and kind of moved around. And so I guess being in the BFA, I want to kind of start to explore that.
Yeah.
Maybe scale a little bit more too. Try to size it up, maybe make it like the size of this room. I don't know. I think it'd be fun, kind of weaving throughout the pieces.
And then what are you, if you can think this far ahead, like, do you want to teach? Do you want to just have your own studio? And
I don't know. I think it's been a little bit of both options for me. I'd love to teach. I got the chance to before I moved here, which was nice. And I think that kind of opened up that option a little bit more too. It was fun seeing my own progress throughout the 2 years that I was at the community college before I moved here, and then getting the chance to work at the ceramic studio that I did before moving here. It was fun to see the progress of my students, and just kind of seeing how they would go from like, a ball of clay on the wheel to something that they can actually use, whether that be like a cup or a bowl. It was fun to kind of see their excitement, and so that I think was kind of the indication, like, okay, I do want to teach, and I do want that to be one of my end goals.
I think you'd be a great teacher.
Thank you.
Yeah, you got that vibe.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, you do. Yeah. Zarina, what's your future art self? What is she up to?
I have a lot of goals, actually. Latest I want is to apply for the BFA by this time next year. That's my latest. If I make enough work over summer, maybe next fall. But next spring, I'm hoping BFA. I also want to get my master's. And from there, I would love to be a teacher, but I think like a main goal, I want to kind of open my own studio maybe, or at least just work at an underprivileged school. That would be my main goal, just because I grew up in an underprivileged area, and I just want people to know that art is a career. Sure, you're not going to make like $500K off of it. Maybe you will though. Who knows? Like there's a life behind it, and I don't think life should always be driven by money. And I want to be a part of that underprivileged program area where you don't convince people like money is, the goal for life. So yeah, teaching would be that
I
for
think
me.
in like under-resourced communities, it's like they just don't even have the opportunity to participate in art. So I love that vision for you reaching out into those communities, because I think that those experiences, even if, yeah, you don't become a professional artist, it's like the richness that art brings to your life is more valuable than money. John, what's future John doing?
God, heck if I know. I don't know. I mean, my whole artistic path has felt like tubing down a river so far, and I'm here for it. I'm gonna keep on keeping on, and if it goes somewhere, that'd be awesome. But at the end of the day, it's just something I'm arguably the most passionate about above anything else. So I think I can't really envision a life where I'm not creating in some capacity, and if it goes somewhere, that'd be awesome. I'm here for it. So I'm very open to just like seeing how it plays out.
I think it's like really important, just if I can just talk as an art elder right now, but times in my life where I felt like drought and just kind of like, I don't know, just something missing, and it's when I got disconnected from my art community. You know, obviously the reality of life and kids and just making a living, it's so worth putting in the time to figure out how to stay active in your community, your art community, and keep collaborating with people, because that energizes you, right, as an artist. So on that note, I'm going to close out this PxP episode number 4. So thank you so much. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you so much. This was so fun.
Thank you everyone for coming.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Okay. Thanks again to the 1078 Gallery for holding space for these conversations. Thank you, Aaron Wade and Becky Snow, for event support. Thank you, Kurt Lind, our live sound engineer. And the theme song is an excerpt from Future Fantasy by Eric Elliott.